Hey Iyo.
Welcome to the Hey EO podcast, where I yap about whatever I want with whoever I want. Enjoy!
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Hey EO podcast. My name is Iyo. Today we have a very special guest on our show. He is a Filipino labor lawyer, an activist, and an advocate hailing from Bacolod City. He studied in Ateneo and earned his degree in communications, and later on, he was able to get a Juris Doctor degree to become a lawyer. He rose to prominence as president of the Bukluran ng Manggagawang Pilipino, a major labor organization, while also serving on the board of the Freedom from Debt Coalition. This guest of ours is known for his bold stances on economic and social reform. He was a senatorial candidate in 2022 under the PLM and in 2025 as well. I think if you look at the numbers, he probably got around 6.5 million votes in the last 2025 midterm election, nearly doubling his votes from the previous 2022 election. We're really excited to have this guest of ours. I'd like to thank Sir Rap Abacan for helping organize this, Sir Felix Fernandez, John Bryan Abitria, and Sir Volt Bohol, the president of Atom. Without further ado, let's have Attorney Luke Espiritu.
Hello, Attorney Luke Espiritu.
Yes, Iyo.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Very nice to have you here on the Hey EO podcast.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much. I have so many questions for you. You're very known to the public, very esteemed, very
Except to
very
the
accomplished.
DDS.
Except to
I'm
the
esteemed except to the DDS.
Oh my, we can talk about that a bit more later. Pero I want to get your reaction first to the wage hike and how it was, I don't know, I guess killed by the Senate. What was your immediate reaction when you heard about that?
Of course. Talagang sinayang nila ang 3 years na pinaglaban ng organized labor itong wage hike na to. It is ironic kasi the Senate, yan yung unang nagpasa ng wage hike bill. Way back in 2022, nagtaas na ang Senado ng 100 pesos. Tapos naghintay kami para sa House of Representatives, and then we appeared before the House of Representatives Committee on Labor. Umabot kami ng 3 taon dyan. I mean, nagdedebate kami, nakikipagdebate kami sa Employers Confederation of the Philippines, other employers groups, even the NEDA, the wage boards. They were against the wage hike. And nagdala kami ng mga expert from UP, from Ateneo. We rebutted yung kanilang claim na it will adversely affect our economy, it will result in inflation. Maraming mga expert na ekonomista na nagsabing it won't lead to inflation. Talagang kailangan nang magtaas ng sahod because our wages here, Iyo, is below the poverty threshold. Saan ka makakita ng bansa na when sweldohan ng mga manggagawa, babagsak sila sa below the poverty line? It is really a necessity na. Kasi siyempre, alam naman ng gutumin natin ng mga manggagawa natin, na ito pa ay nasa context ng pataas ang cost of living. So 3 years namin nakipagbakbakan kami. And yet, nung napasa na ng House of Representatives, finally, debunking all the claims ng mga employers groups na it will lead to inflation, babagsak ang ekonomiya, magsasara sila. Okay? After the thorough hearing. Then last minute na lang, di ba? Pinasa na ng House of Representatives, 200 ang pinasa ng House of Representatives. Ang kailangan lang gawin ng Senado at ng House ay umupo sila sa isang bicameral conference committee. At they will have to reconcile yung kanilang sariling wage bills. Kasi ang isa 100, isa 200. Pagkatapos nilang i-reconcile, dapat ipasa na yan kay Bongbong Marcos, signed,
Oo.
then tapos na dapat. Di ba?
Oo.
So sa very last minute na yan,
Mm.
yung 3 taon na pinaghirapan, kasama sila.
Mhm.
Tinapon lang nila ng ganun. So anong ibig sabihin nito? Ang ibig sabihin nito, talagang hindi sila sincero sa pagtaas ng sahod ng mga manggagawa. Pag-alleviate ng suffering ng mga manggagawa. Hindi sila sincero kasi patapos na eh.
Mhm.
'Di ba? Lahat ng mga pinaghirapan nakasama sila,
Oo.
ay itinapon lang nila ng ganun.
Do you think this will move over to the 20th Congress? Do you think there's more potential for it to be passed in
Kasi
the 20th Senate also?
I don't know if papasa sa ganitong klaseng Senate o kaya House Pero the demand na para itaas ang sahod ay talagang isang permanent na demand. Kasi hindi naman yan isang parang trip lang,
Oo.
di ba? It is really tied to the necessity na kailangan natin na itaas ang sahod dahil ang taas na ng cost of living.
Oo.
Like the cost of living will amount to around 1,200 pesos
Oo.
to 1,615 pesos.
Mhm.
Or even, sabihin na natin, i-average natin yan to 1,500 pesos, depending kung anong computation ang gagamitin mo. And ang sahod ay 645, pinakamataas sa NCR. Others will be 400, 500, may iba pa nga mga 300 plus. So saan mo naman nahanapin, saan nahanapin ng mga manggagawa ang pampuno dun sa kulang? So talagang may pressure pa rin because of the circumstances. Magkakaroon pa rin yan ng pressure na itaas ang sahod. And magkakaroon pa rin ng pag-iit ang mga manggagawa. Organized labor will still demand na itataas ang sahod. And I don't know kung ano ang gagawin ng ating mga mambabatas kung if they will heed the call na itaas na ang sahod.
Okay. So, we've talked a lot about, I guess, the wage. Syempre, yung pagtaas ng sweldo, and then there are so many more economic issues I want to get to later. But I want to ask you about impeachment. So, what was your reaction to the recent vote to remand the impeachment case back to the House of Representatives?
It is really legally absurd and anomalous.
As a lawyer.
Yes, imagine mo to si Alan Peter Cayetano goaded the Senate to remand, so-called remand or return yung impeachment or articles of impeachment sa House of Representatives for him or the Senate to ask questions na madali lang naman i-ascertain ng answers doon. Like how can you remand an impeachment complaint or the articles of impeachment just for you to ask the House of Representatives whether or not constitutional or unconstitutional yung pagpasa ng mga complaints sa House of Representatives. Sasabihin ba naman ng House of Representatives, well, we submitted our articles of impeachment to you. Perhaps it is illegal or perhaps it is unconstitutional. It's really stupid, right? Magtatanong ka lang, ibabalik mo, para lang magtanong ka kung legal o illegal ang ginawa ng House. Alam naman sabihin ng House, illegal ang ginawa nila. Di ba? Ipapasa mo, babalik sa House para magtanong ka, seryoso ba kayo? Na ipatuloy nyo ito? Of course, the House will say, ipapatuloy namin yan. Di ba? It is a useless exercise. Di ba? It is trivial. Di ba? The grounds that they relied upon in order to return the articles of impeachment to the House of Representatives, trivial. Very trivial. Magtatanong ka lang, ibinalik mo pa. Like, how can you do that? The House has already completed the process of originating the complaint and preparing the articles of impeachment and submitting it before the Senate. It has done its job. How can the Senate now undo that process? Pwede ba nilang gawin yun? Totally absurd, legally anomalous, and I don't understand if Alan Peter Cayetano is really a lawyer. Really. I don't understand if a lawyer will have that kind of a legal theory that he had. Unique na legal theory that the Senate can do that. And ito namang mga senador na ito, 24 sa kanila, except for the 5 who voted against, hindi ko rin maintindihan ano ang nasa utak nila. Why they allowed that. 'Di ba? And under the Constitution, sabi naman kapag naipasa na yung articles of impeachment, trial should proceed forthwith.
Oo, tama.
And ito lang ang Senado
Mhm.
na simpleng English. Hindi nila maintindihan anong ibig sabihin ng forthwith.
Mhm.
Ang dami pang mga pasikot-sikot na, forthwith does not mean this and that, Talagang acrobatics gumamit sila ng legal acrobatics.
Yes, parang gumamit sila ng legal acrobatics to justify.
To justify something that is really crazy, idiotic, stupid.
And if anything, parang after the Senate remanded the case, the following day parang binalik
Binalik
ng House sa Senate.
Yes, nagpiping-pong sila ngayon.
Nagpiping-pong,
Di ba?
oo.
The Senate will remand, the House will reject. Okay, so what will happen? Then they're instigating a constitutional crisis. And then what will happen? They will file cases with the Supreme Court.
Yes.
So that will, in effect, result to an undue delay in the trial of the impeachment or articles of impeachment against the Vice President. Di ba?
Tama.
So, eto, sa tingin ko, ang disenyo talaga nito ay delay. Delaying it, put it in limbo, para hindi ma-resolve. I don't know if it involves both the Marcos and the Duterte camps. Because it would seem as if there is really motive for both to agree to it.
Yes.
Number one, of course, if you are with Sara Duterte, you don't want trial to proceed. Even assuming you have the numbers, because they're all like bragging na may numero si Sara Duterte. It only takes 7 senators in order to acquit. Di ba? Kung bilangin mo, kompleto na ang 7 nila. Di ba? Pero you don't want to proceed to trial because even if you have the numbers, kapag nag-trial, lalabas ang mga ebidensya, okay, makikita ng publiko, and people will now be convinced na siya ay isang plunderer and committed high crimes against the people. Okay, committed the betrayal of public trust. So if you are from the Sara Duterte camp, even if you have the numbers, you have a motive not to proceed with trial. Now, analyzing also the situation, if you were Marcos and Sara Duterte has the numbers in the Senate, ayaw mo rin mag-proceed sa trial. Why? Baka magkakaroon ng eventual acquittal So I think the middle ground for both parties would freeze the impeachment complaint. Let it not proceed to trial. Allow it to remain in limbo. Diba? And don't push for a final resolution of the case. Both of these camps have an interest in what has happened in the Senate. Na ibalik, i-remand, and then the House of Representatives will also reject. Then in the meantime, you will create a constitutional crisis, a legal question, which now you will elevate before the Supreme Court in order for the Supreme Court to make its ruling. So, time will lapse, and then later on, magkakaroon na ng panibagong eleksyon. So, I think by possibility that both camps are really into this, conspired in order to bring about this kind of a situation. And for us, we don't want that. We want trial to proceed. Di ba? We want presentation of evidence. At talagang i-hold to account yung ginawa ni Sara Duterte ng paglustay ng 600 million pesos.
I think that's a very parang novel perspective kasi yung alam namin, so far dito sa podcast is the Marcoses would want the trial to proceed because magkalaban sila with the Dutertes. But now that you bring that up, medyo kine-question na yung whether this trial will really happen or not. So yan yung actually yung next question ko. Do you think the trial will push through or not? Sa tingin mo, it's a no.
For me, it should. I don't want to concede to any result because the result can be a consequence of several factors. And I don't discount yung strength ng mass movement to demand for trial.
Mhm.
And I am a believer in the strength of the people to directly intervene in the process. So I will not make any conclusions as if it is hopeless, because I do believe in the power of the people to intervene in the process, and we have been doing so, right? Nandun right away after 1 day or after 2 days, nandun na kami sa Senado,
Mhm.
and we demanded for trial to proceed.
Mhm.
Galitin nila ang taong bayan, kikilos ang taong bayan. So, I don't know if it will be enough, but ang public pressure to bear upon the Senate and the House. Pero let us see. And I feel hopeful na because ginigiit natin, yan ang pag-asa para matuloy ang trial.
So moving forward, what does this sort of mass action look like to be able to continue to pressure the Senate to push through with the trial?
Well, the highest form would be people power. We have experienced that in the aftermath of naalala ng ilan sa atin. I don't know if you were born at the time. The era of impeachment trial, where the
Not yet.
senators refused to admit evidence. Yun yung pagbukas ng second envelope.
Mhm.
And dahil dun sa ginawa ng mga senador na they were shielding ERAP doon sa presentation of evidence, nagpunta ang marami sa EDSA People Power, and nagkaroon ng EDSA DOS.
Mhm.
So, wag nilang galitin ang taong bayan. 'Di ba? Wag harap-harapang pangluloko.
Mhm.
Kasi you can only abuse your power up to a certain point, 'di ba? So they are actually trying, they are uh, parang nilalagay na nila sa ganung klaseng sitwasyon din
Mhm.
na magalit na ang taong bayan. So kung anong itsura niyan, well, very well, historical precedents has shown na pwedeng mag people power.
Pero do you think the Philippines is the same as it was back then in 2001?
No, we have become worse, right? We have become worse.
Pero in terms of the electorate per se, yung masa, yung taong bayan, what is the main difference between then and now?
Main difference between then and now, well, the political dynasties still hold sway. And because of that, hindi naman talaga totoo na merong demokrasya. Ang electoral process ay talagang fully taken hostage nila. They use force and intimidation. They control the process from the ground up to the counting. And I think ngayon ay na-perfect pa nila lalo yon. So perhaps yung matter of degree, mas worse ngayon. But the same conditions still, still existed. Kasi hindi naman nagbago yung ating politika doon sa pag-monopolize ng power ng mga political dynasty. As a matter, kung whether naging worse. Yung control ng mga political dynasties.
Pero fundamentally, yung naapektuhan yung decision making power ng tao dahil mas malakas yung intimidation. So
Yes.
parang biktima sila.
Yes, victims. And
Victims
kaya
sila.
nga hindi ako nagsasubscribe sa bobotante.
Yes,
na
I wanted
theory.
to
Hindi ako nagsasubscribe dyan kasi they are victims. Everyone is.
Yes.
Even those who vote for the dynasties.
Okay.
Yeah, kasi imagine mo kapag hindi ka bumoto sa like the local warlord in your place or local dynasty, wala kang public service, wala kang hindi ka kasali sa AKAP, TUPAD at AIX. Wala kang serbisyo sa public hospital. You will be identified as contras partidos. And when you are identified as contras partidos, intimidate ka. Yung aabot pa nga yan sa patayan eh. There is a reason why this country is the deadliest place for journalists and broadcasters. Kasi kapag local journalist ka o broadcaster ka and you criticize the dynasty sa iyong lugar, papatayin ka. So, anong choice ng masang Pilipino na defenseless against the power of the dynasties? Di ba? Kung hindi sila boboto, maraming consequence sa kanila. So, wala silang magagawa. Kailangan nilang bumoto dun sa dinastiya kasi kung hindi, wala silang public service.
Oo.
Pwede pa silang i-harass, i-intimidate.
Mhm.
'Di ba? So, free choice is actually an illusion. 'Di ba? It is not true na mayroong free choice ang taong bayan pagdating sa eleksyon. At all levels, from the ground up to the county.
Mhm.
Di ba? So, ang fraud, ang electoral fraud, you could almost always assume that there will be each and every election.
Yes.
Di ba?
No doubt about
No
that.
doubt, di ba?
But I think that is yung yung areas that are disproportionately affected by that are those in the provinces.
Even I think,
like to think.
kahit cities
Sa cities.
Yeah.
Pero parang not all, I'd say. Parang there are some areas na mas malala yung sitwasyon, no?
Meron, matter of degree. Like for example, kapag taga Mandaluyong ka, would you dare go against the Abalos dynasty? Would you dare? Would you dare be contras partidos listed among the contras partidos? It comes to the point nga na they run unopposed.
Mhm.
Umabot na sa ganun yun. Yung kanilang monopoly sa power.
Oo.
Because of their use of many ways of controlling the process. Ang tawag namin dyan sa legal profession ay vitiation of consent. Vini-vitiate ang consent ng electorate by money, vote buying, intimidation, even up to killing. So sa lahat, even sa cities, di ba? Na merong mga dynasty, talagang would you dare? I mean, right now, maraming mga dynastiya dyan running unopposed. Yung Abalos sa Mandaluyong, where I come from, unopposed. Saan ka nakikita ang electoral exercise na wala na talagang lalaban? Aabot pa nga yan sa punto na dahil wala nang lalaban, ang mga dinastiya maghahati. Kasi wala nang kalaban eh. So, among their family, di ba, sila na mismo ang magko-contest ng electoral position. Like in Las Piñas, the Aguilar dynasty, sila na yung naglalaban-laban. I mean, in Makati, ang Binay dynasty, sila na yung naglalaban-laban. Maghahati na sila doon. So, whether in the province or in the cities, still the same as long as merong dynasty.
Okay, I see. Yeah, I think it's a situation where at the end of the day, kawawa yung Pilipino.
Yeah.
Kawawa yung Pilipino. And I'm assuming that's why you're into politics, because you want to improve this situation. You have very strong advocacies against political dynasties, I believe.
I think I want a stronger statement than that.
Go ahead.
We participated in the electoral exercise, and I am warning everyone not to make any wrong interpretation, because in 2022 they thought that we ran even without money or machinery because we simply want to do propaganda. Nothing can be further from the truth. Okay? That is our limitation, na wala kaming control, ano? Na wala naman kaming pera compared to them. We don't have machinery because, di ba, mayroon kaming political party pero wala kami yung latag na machinery. And people thought na we were running just to do propaganda, to talk about, wage, to highlight our issues. No.
Oo naman.
Make no mistake about it. And I will make this statement, even ayoko yung mas mababaw na statement. This is a bid for power for the oppressed. We want to capture power for the oppressed. And we're serious about that. And with power, we will do things. We will change things. Because we need that power in order to change things. And we don't offer any bluff. We don't bluff around. We hindi kami nagbibiro dito.
Yeah, participating in an election is very complicated. It's a very stressful time. I'm sure si Rap would understand that as your political manager. So it's definitely not a waste of. It's definitely not worth wasting your time.
It is not.
Into it.
And I'll be warning everyone. Kahit papano, lumalapit-lapit na tayo. Di ba?
Yes.
Hindi siya pagtakbo na parang talunan ka lang.
Oo naman.
Like I don't have to remind people na nakakakuha naman tayo ng milyong-milyong boto sa mababang budget, okay, monetarily,
Yes, yes.
'di ba? Pero lumalapit,
Oo.
lumalapit-lapit, 'di ba? Para hindi rin nila kami binibelittle.
Okay.
And once we get that power, we're not gonna be joking around. We're not, 'di ba? We're really gonna effect the changes that we want to effect.
Oo. Tama. And you're really you're really not just doing this to to waste your time. Parang
Of
it's really
course.
it's really an effort talaga.
Yeah.
So parang the only reason for someone to run a political campaign is to win.
Yes, to win.
That's the goal.
Yes.
No one runs
You're
just to,
serious about winning.
'di ba? No one runs just to, make a
Mm.
statement and all
Yes.
that. Syempre, because of the efforts you and your team put into this. And I was actually able to look at your data, no? Medyo dumoble yung numbers mo from 2022. So in 2022, you were at 3.5 million votes. That was around 6.2, 6.3 points
Percent,
versus
I think.
6.2%. Oo. In 2025, you doubled your votes and now you're at 11.3%, I believe, at 29th place. You were higher than two Duterte candidates with the budget you have, which is, I think, very impressive. So I guess before I think this is our next topic, yung election. Before I ask about the serious questions, I want to ask you muna, what did you feel when Sharon Cuneta endorsed you in 2022?
Of course, I was grateful that she did, ano. Importante rin naman ang mga boses ng mga medyo sikat na personalidad. In order for awareness natin ay tumaas-taas. And I even encountered Kaki, yung kanyang daughter,
yes, oo.
once doon sa Trellis restaurant. She
Oh,
was with Senator Kiko.
okay.
And I approached her and I told her, please thank your mom for me. And thank you also. So, very grateful. I wish one day makita ko siyang personal and really thank her personally.
Oh, yes. Hopefully be able to do that.
Mhm.
So, I guess my first, my next question for you about the election is, what was the difference in terms of the political landscape between 2022 and 2025? Parang ano yung what made you double your votes?
Sa tingin ko, consistency ng mensahe. People who have been telling me, di ba? I mean, huwag ka masyadong tumira, huwag ka masyadong kumontra. Like, yung lohika kasi ng trapo politics, di ba? Maging, kuwan ka lang. Maging mabait ka lang. Like for example, ang daming mga DDS, di ba? So, huwag kang tumira kasi ang daming DDS mamaya hindi bumoto sa yan. O huwag kang tumira kay Marcos kasi may mga Marcos loyalist lang din, di ba? Na butante rin. Baka mamaya hindi ka mananalo. And I really stuck to our principles.
Okay.
For me, meron din namang mga boboto dahil precisely because hindi ka nagpapaka-safe lang. Hindi ka simpleng walang kinakalaban, walang kino-call out, at pagka medyo controversial na mga issues, huwag ka masyadong pumosisyon. Ang daming mga controversial na mga issues para hindi ma-turn off sa iyo ang mga certain sections of the voting population. Like for example, women's rights issues, LGBTQ plus issues na baka ma-offend ang religious feelings ng iba. So, huwag kang tumindig. I defied all of those. And precisely because I defied all of those and did not follow the trap or traditional politics, the logic of traditional politics. Precisely because of that, na maraming mga conscious voters, especially from among the youth, ang bumoto sa atin. And right now, ang aking voter base ay really comes from the youth. I will give you an example. In NCR, the voting population of those belonging to 18 years old to 28 years old comprises, I think it's more than one-fourth
Okay.
of the voting population, around 1.9 million.
Okay.
And from among them, I was I was able to get the votes of 1.64 million.
Okay.
70 more than 70%
Mhm.
of the young voters from 18 to 28 in the NCR.
Mhm.
So the numbers will show na malakas ang aking support from the youth and students,
Oo.
'di ba? And I will not be able to get that kung simpleng alam mo 'yun, hindi yung sinunod ko lang ang lohika ng traditional politics, which is wag kang tumindig.
Mhm.
Maging acceptable ka sa lahat,
Oo.
'di ba? Don't define yourself categorically sa mga issues.
Mhm.
Para sa akin, yung section na ganyan ng populasyon, yan ang aking gustong palakasin. So I
Okay.
attribute the increase of my votes to that.
Okay. So the assumption there is the number of people that you that really like politicians na hindi takot tumindig, yung mga yung mga very firm on issues, yung mga those that really call out those in power. You think that number is growing?
Yeah, I think so. Wala namang ibang pupuntahan yan kundi kailangan lumawak ng lumawak.
Mhm.
Kasi kumpara mo naman sa politika ng political dynasties, di ba? Empty, bankrupt type of politics.
Oo.
Wala talagang binibitbit na issue. Kaya nga sila simpleng nagbubudots lang eh. At saka kumakanta at sumasayaw eh. Di ba umabot na nga yan na si Willie Revillame eh. Sasabihin niya wala siyang gagawin sa Senado kundi mag-hep-hep hooray lang eh. Di ba? So kung ganyan ganyan ka empty, bankrupt ang politics. Ano sa tingin natin ang aabutin yan? Magi-increase? Sa tingin natin, magi-increase. Inabot na nila ang peak level ng ganyang klaseng absurdity.
Mhm.
And the only way para na mapupuntahan ng principled politics ay mas dadami. And yan ang aking wager. That is my wager.
Mhm.
So everything I do, yung aking takbo sa politika is based on that wager. It is really based on the hope na ang ating lipunang Pilipino ay hindi tatanggapin
Mhm.
yung politika na basura. Na darating ang tipping point
Mhm.
na masusuka siya kasi basura yung politika eh. Di ba? So diyan ako tumatakbo. Hindi ako magi-invest sa klase ng politika na yung status ko. Magi-invest ako dun sa future. That is the future of Philippine politics. Mas dadami ang maniniwala sa prinsipyo.
Mhm.
Kaya whether I will win or lose upon that wager, okay lang. Wala namang problema. But I will, I will bet on that. Di ba?
Okay. Do you think if you make that bet in 2028, do you see yourself getting enough numbers to reach the magic 12?
I know the reason kung bakit hindi tayo umabot sa it was not enough in order to win.
Mhm.
It's not because ang ating politika ay seryoso, may laman. It's not because of that. In fact, that is a factor for winning para sa akin.
Mhm.
The reason is handicap ang aking kandidatura. Unang-una, hindi naman ako member ng isang mainstream coalition or mainstream party.
Okay. Oo.
Di ba? Pangalawa, syempre, resources and alam mo na, yung makinarya.
Mhm.
Pero kung ikaw ay member ng isang mainstream coalition or mainstream party, di magkakaroon ka ng makinarya.
Mhm.
Di ba? So, pero ito naman yon. I-analyze mo. With all those handicaps, diba? Wala kang pera, wala kang makinarya, hindi ka member ng mainstream party or mainstream coalition, you still got 6.4, close to 6.5 million
6.5.
votes.
Yeah.
Simply because of your principled politics.
Mhm.
Because of your articulation of the alternative.
Mhm.
Siguro yung mga sinasabi mo na natalo ko pang mga DDS candidates, magkano kaya ginastos?
Oh, I'm sure they
Magkano
spent a
kaya?
lot.
They were part of a
Oo.
mainstream party. They were PDP Laban, di ba?
Oo.
And they had millions, if not billions, and they spent money.
Mhm.
And yet, di ba, paka-level ko lang sila or natalo ko pa sila.
Oo.
So imaginein mo na lang if with this type of articulating on alternatives,
Mhm.
standing for principled politics,
Mhm.
and you are now backed up by a mainstream coalition or a mainstream party,
Mhm.
imagine what it can do.
Oo.
Di ba? You could just imagine, di ba? Yung handicap na yon ay wala sa 2028.
Mhm.
Di ba? So,
So you're not against joining a mainstream party?
opposition. Of
Opposite.
course, not mainstream in the sense that to join the DDS
Ay,
or
naman.
to join the Marcos forces. I call for a united opposition.
Okay.
Diba?
Genuine
it should really
opposition.
be composed or it should comprise of the liberal democratic forces and the
Okay.
progressives.
Mhm.
Yun yung two main forces na kailangan magsama.
Yes.
Hindi lang for 2028 because
Mhm.
this is not simply about elections.
Mhm.
Dapat
yes,
magsama ang
definitely.
liberal democratic forces at ang mga progressives dito sa laban, sa political na laban.
Mhm.
Now, even before the elections.
Yes.
Diba, dito sa impeachment, dapat nag-unite na yan. Mga
yes.
puwersang yan.
Definitely.
At sa marami pang iba.
Yes.
Otherwise, kapag hindi tayo mag-unite, most likely, ang mananalo sa 2028 ay ang mga puwersa ni Duterte.
Mm.
Dalawa na lang, nakita natin ng eleksyon netong 2025 na ang Marcos forces halos wala nang say sa process. 'Di ba? Marcos candidates lost.
Mhm.
Despite yung mga ginastos nila, despite yung makinarya, Benhur Abalos really indicates yung pagkatalo ng mga Marcos forces.
Mhm.
Bang Aquino won. Number 2, Kiko Pangilinan won. Heidi Mendoza had more votes than
With your
many
DDS.
other DDS.
Oo.
And yet, also, the DDS forces won with the victory of Bato de la Rosa and Marcoleta.
Mhm.
Somehow, I would say that exceptional yung kay Bongo because Bongo would have his own votes
Yes.
in addition to the DDS votes because yung Malasakit
Malasakit
Center, di ba?
Yes. Oo.
So, dalawang puwersa ngayon ang nakita kong nag-flex ng muscle.
Yes.
Di ba? It is the Duterte supporters
Mhm.
and the whatever is the remnants of the pink wave in 2022. Yung mga natirang puwersa dyan, yung mga maraming mga angat Taytay, angat Rizal, angat this and that social base siya.
Mga people's councils.
Ng mga people's council. Social base siya ng demand for good governance.
Mhm.
And of course, yung mga kabataan. So, DDS, kabataan, plus yung mga remnants nung pink wave nung 2022. Yan ngayon ang mga puwersang nagbabanggaan. Di ba?
Yes.
So, dapat mag-unite yung liberal democratic forces and progressive forces. Tapos, in order to also consolidate yung mga puwersang gusto ng good governance, gusto ng pagbabago, ayaw ng old politics. Otherwise, kung hindi mag-unite and consolidate these forces, ang magko-consolidate ang mga Duterte forces. And together with them, ang mga traditional politicians, ang mga political dynasties, nagka-calculate na ngayon for 2028. Sino ang sasamahan nila? Siyempre, hindi nila tatayaan si Marcos. Kasi si Marcos for the next 3 years magiging lame duck na yan. Patapos na yan eh. So, ang tatayaan nila ay si Sara Duterte. Kasi pag naging presidente yan at hindi natin tinayaan yan ngayon, di outside the kulambu tayo pag yan ang naging presidente.
Oo.
So the DDS forces plus our traditional politicians, our political dynasties, magre-realign doon kay Duterte.
Oo.
So if we don't unite, anong mangyayari?
Mm.
Diba? We will give power on a serve it on a silver platter sa Duterte forces.
Oo.
Mahina tayo.
Mm.
And I don't have to remind everyone pag bumalik na naman ang Duterte kung anong klaseng lipunan ang magkakaroon tayo.
Okay.
Talagang babagsak na sa Banana Republic itong Pilipinas.
Mm.
And deadly. Hindi lang siya sa Banana Republic na nakakatawa. Diba? Banana Republic na deadly. Babalik na naman ang impunity, ang patayan, ang mga red tagging.
Mm.
Diba? And in order to, pigilan natin, to prevent that possibility, diba? We really have to find it necessary and exigent na magsama-sama tayo.
You were talking about the pink wave in 2022, and we also had a bit of a pink wave in 2025. What did we do wrong dun sa pink wave nung 2022 na medyo nag-improve dun sa 2025?
I don't know kung we really did something to improve it, but we have to consolidate these forces. Kasi hindi naman nawawala yung mga pwersang to.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, walang nagli-lead sa kanila. Hindi natin na-consolidate is into one strong force na active politically, pero hindi mo madi-deny na active sila politically.
Mm-hmm.
Nagka-campaign nga on their own mobilizing their own resources on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
Nag-house to house pa rin. Nagpapa-imprenta ng kanilang sariling mga tarpaulin. Nagdadala ng mga pulyeto, nag-imprenta ng kanilang pulyeto. Ganun pa rin ang mga ginagawa niya. I've met them. At nagkakalat yan sa buong Pilipinas. So, I think, hindi ko masasabing may improvement kasi hindi natin nagawa yung pagkonsolida. Ito na lang ang challenge for 2028. Dapat i-harness yan into one big movement. Electoral and political movement. Not just electoral. Kasi kung electoral lang yan, di 2028 lang kikilos yan.
Mm-hmm.
Samantalang maraming mga political battles ngayon pa lang sa 2025. At kapag 2028 lang sila kikilos, di ba? Hindi rin makapaghanda, hindi rin makapag-ensayo, hindi rin makapag-create sila ng mas malakas na organisasyon. That's what we must do right now. Ang challenge is for us ay i-unite yan, i-harness yan, at i-lead. Magkaroon ng leadership sa kanila. So, para pagdating ng 2028, haharap yan sa mga puwersa naman ng mga dynasty at nila di Duterte. They will now be in shape in order to do that.
What challenges do you see in terms of consolidating these forces together for 2028 and beyond? I think dalawa yung set of challenges. There's the electoral and the political after.
The challenge really is for these forces to accumulate the necessary political experience and even define itself or themselves. Diba? Define themselves in relation to issues. Sinasabi ko nga sa kanila kapag nakausap ko sila, good governance is good, but it cannot be enough. Ang ating demand for good governance. Kailangan din ng social justice.
Okay.
So kailangan yung political alternative kailangan i-define nila in relation doon sa kalaban natin na mga mapagsamantala, hindi lang sa punto ng paggogobyerno, kundi mapagsamantala mismo sa mga basic sectors. So, dapat part na kanilang consolidation ay magkaroon sila ng political maturity. I-define nila what they are fighting for. Kailangan lumagpas sa good governance. Para kailangan lumagpas din sila sa simpleng electoral. Kasi ang tendency is malilimit lang yung movement na ganyan sa pagboboto ng mga individual.
Oo.
Mababaw yun. Hindi natin matatalo ang Duterte forces sa simpleng ganyan lang ang outlook. Yung simpleng boboto ka lang ng individual.
Mhm.
Di ba? Kailangan they themselves ay maging active agents for change. Hindi lang magkakampanya tuwing eleksyon. So maraming mga kailangan na gawin para i-harness yung mga pwersang yan na nagsimula nung pink wave ng 2022.
So when you're talking about uniting, there's the need to make sure that good governance is not the only
Yeah. It's not the only
platform.
one.
Kailangan din may social justice issues
Social
that
justice.
are defined
Yes.
by these camps. Yung question ko is, what are some social justice issues that might be some points of disagreement between, the different forces that you want to unite?
Well, it really depends on ano yung social class, no?
Mhm.
Kasi part of the pink wave ay mga negosyante rin.
Mhm.
So, halimbawa, one of the social justice issues na kailangan nating i-resolve ay yung pinag-usapan natin kanina, which is starvation wages.
Mhm.
So, dapat lang i-resolve para magkaroon ng agreement. Like, parang tulad lang din yan ng pagbubuo mo ng unity on many other things. Dapat magkaroon ng dialogue, magkaroon ng proseso ng dialogue. At least that.
Mhm.
This should not really be a matter ng sobrang disagreement natin kasi pinag-uusapan natin dito ay ang isang ekonomiya na mas makakabuti pa sa mga maliliit na negosyante. Or kasi once na alam naman natin, kapag merong panggastos ang mga manggagawa, actually nakakabuti yan sa ekonomiya kasi may
Yes.
purchasing power sila.
Oo.
Di ba? So, kailangan lang ng dialogue in order to flesh that out.
Mhm.
So, at marami pang iba. So, regardless kung ano yung iyong social class,
Mhm.
at least pwede naman nating ipag-unite sa mga ganyang mga issues. At least magkaroon ng honest to goodness na dialogue para ipagtagpo ang mga conflicting interest pagdating sa mga social, what we call our social justice issues.
If you were to make the case to businessmen, what would you tell them in terms of increasing wages? Parang kasi what I'm thinking of is aside from the economic benefit, there's also yung social benefit of having of creating more just wages kasi it helps the overall state of society. Kung walang gutom, then syempre your society improves. Like there's so many other factors beyond economics that really affect or that are affected by increasing wages and other social justice issues. So how would you make that case to?
Well, that's true, that's true. But I really also want to point out that even if we talk in terms of economics,
Mhm.
di ba? It is the better alternative.
Okay.
I even assert na social justice is not charity.
Mhm.
It is very important for us to create an economy that veers away from what I call the rentier type of an economy that we have in the Philippines. Pilipinas kasi, ang ating ekonomiya hindi naman nakabase sa production. Hindi tayo nag-industrialize, even our agricultural production, pinababayaan natin.
Mhm.
Saan nakabase ang ekonomiya sa Pilipinas? Simpleng renta, simpleng mga non-productive ways.
Mhm.
Ang negosyo ng mga bilyonaryo sa atin ay nanggaling sa lupa na pinapataas ang value, ginagawang mall, ginagawang real estate.
Mhm.
So, ang lupa natin ay may kompetisyon dyan
Mhm.
as to its use and its access.
Oo.
So, ang mga bilyonaryo natin, yung mga mayayaman natin want to get hold of the land, not to make it productive, not in order to engage in agriculture, which is the productive use of the land, but simply to increase its value by putting in improvements, di ba? Gagawin mong mall, tataas yan from agricultural, tataas yan, magiging commercial, then you will sell it or you rent it out, or gagawing mga real estate, di ba? So, it defines our economy kasi economy natin ganun. Walang pinuproduce. Walang nililiga na pangangailangan natin. Hindi tayo industrialized. Diba? And the reason for that is because yung tinatawag nating social justice ay hindi natin ginawa. Ano ang pinaka-root cause niyan? Root cause niyan is ang mga magsasaka, for example, inapi. Hindi binigyan ng access sa lupa. Merong mga landlord na will make sure na they live in abject poverty. But they are the productive sectors, di ba? So kung productive sectors sila, dapat sila ang may hawak ng lupa. Make it productive. Tapos improve nilang agrikultura. So you see, social justice is not simply charity. Our economy could have been much better if we, for example, in this case, if we really instituted land reform, if we really gave land to the farmers and help the farmers to make land productive, then we would not have been dependent on imports for our food. An indication that we have an economy na hindi nakabase sa produksyon at ekonomiya na talagang bagsak. An indication of that is the fact na tayo ang number 1 rice importer sa buong mundo. Buong mundo We are a rice-producing country. But how can it be na nag-i-import tayo ng bigas? It's because of that. We did not resolve the social justice question in relation to our agrarian sector or the agricultural sector. Same is true regarding workers' wages. Di ba? Hindi naman charity yan eh. I mean, they need that in order to provide for their needs. And kapag may panggasto sila, mabibili nila yung kanilang mga pangangailangan, di ba? May purchasing power sila, then it could support commerce. Yeah, it could support the MSMEs, the businesses, mga MSME. So, I would even insist on arguing based on the economics. The reason why we do not resolve these social justice questions is precisely because of our rentier type of an economy. Land, for example, is not given to the farmer because access to that is given exclusively to the real estate developer. How many farmlands have been converted? Look at the Villar City in Cavite. Ang lawak nun, di ba?
Yeah.
So nandun yung pinagkakakitaan. So the reason why it's not being resolved is dahil we insist on a rentier type of an economy na hindi productive, di ba? And part of that is dinidispossess ang mga basic sectors natin. We dispossess our urban poor. We don't give them housing because land again is devoted to the Villars, to the Henry Cs, for them to make their rentier business thrive. We even dispossess the indigenous people of their ancestral domain. Kasi bakit? Ang lupa binibigay sa mga nagmimina. Anong activities ng mga nagmimina? Rentier once again. I-extract lang talaga ang metal ore, babakbakin ng bundok, hindi nga ipoproseso. Wholesale, i-export sa China, export sa Australia na sila magpa-process. Again, all of these are injustices are committed in favor of the rentier economy that we have. And it is precisely that rentier economy that leads to underdevelopment. So, the conclusion is follows na ang pagkakaroon ng social justice, it is even a necessity for a more developed economy. It is a necessity for all the businessmen or mga namumuhunan na gustong mag-engage into an economy that is based on production. Di ba?
Yes.
So it is not simply about the yung human the human element. I know that it is also about that. I know it is also about dignity. I know it is also about being fair. Pero partida na. Ang aking argumento ay while I believe in the human aspect. While I believe in that, pero papartidahan kita. Mag-usap tayo simply about economy.
Yeah, it's an economical decision also.
Yes.
It's an economical argument.
Yes.
I think that's a point we don't hear a lot. Kasi usually when you think of increasing wages, it's uneconomical. Yun yung sinasabi, di ba? It prevents business activity, it harms the economy and all, but you're able to shed light on that argument and hopefully mako-convince yung mga kaibigan natin in entrepreneurship, in business, to be more supportive of those policies. I think another question I might have also is about your stance on abolishing the regional wage board. So I believe you made that stance in 2022.
Until now.
Also until now, I believe so. What do you say to critics that argue that having this kind of wage board is needed to contextualize the wage for higher GDP areas like cities, yung mas matataas na areas with a higher economic activity versus yung mga probinsya where economic activity is lower, where prices are lower?
No. When you talk about prices, the figures don't lie. Even government figures, the cost of living is quite uniform. From region 1 to region 12, quite uniform. Mas mahal pa nga ang cost of living sa farm area. Tapos ganyan ang sahod. We must really just have one wage rate. Di ba? Kasi ang cost of living ay pare-parehas. They just research on the figures. Umabot yan ng 1,200 on the average. And I don't have to explain kung bakit. Like part of that is because nag-offset naman yung mas mahal sa probinsya, mas mura sa Maynila, or mas mahal sa Maynila, mas mura sa probinsya. Pagkain sa probinsya mas mura, pero ang kuryente doon mas mahal.
Okay.
Ang gasolina doon mas mahal. So nag-offsetan sila and the figures will show na halos pumapareha sila. Nag-average sila ng 1,200 per day.
Okay.
So that's the reason kung bakit hindi dapat tayo magkaroon ng iba-ibang mga wage rates.
Okay.
Di ba? Ipagpantay natin. And before, ganun naman national wage tayo.
Oo.
Noong 1989 lang yung pinag-iba-iba para i-determine siya by region. And it resulted in yung sitwasyon natin ngayon na ang sahod natin ay below the poverty threshold. Talagang iba yun. I mean, I don't understand bakit hindi tayo nadi-disturb doon. Na ang bansa natin ay pag nagsweldo ka dito, you are considered below the poverty line. Para sa akin, alarming yan. Sobrang alarming yan. Sobrang dapat nadi-disturb ka na. Kung gobyerno ka, mahiya ka na. Ibig sabihin. Kung ikaw ay regional wage board, ikaw ay mahiya. Bakit? Kasi yung determination nyo for 30 years ng mga wages resulted into that. Proud, meron kayang regional wage board na magiging proud sa kanyang wage determination na for 30 years umabot siya sa below the poverty threshold ang mga sweldo sa Pilipinas. In the meantime, you look at the figures, ang productivity ay tumaas lang ang productivity. So ibig sabihin na maraming yaman na na-create. Pero not a single part of it ay ibinalik. Para at least man lang itaas yung sahod at para magkaroon ng panggastos sa cost of living ng mga manggagawa. Lalong bumagsak lang talaga ang sahod. So I mean, sobra-sobra for 30 years yan. Kung doon na lang mismo sa surplus value, we call it surplus value, the wealth that has been generated for more than 30 years ng ating mga businesses. Yung by keeping the wages low, yun doon na lang sa na-accumulate na yaman na ganyan, di ba? I mean, na-imbak lang yan sa inyo. Diba? Ibalik nyo naman. Diba? Ibalik nyo sa baba. You know, if we have an economy na talagang pauperized yung baba, social pyramid, diba? Ang base ng pyramid, yun yung actually ang nagpa-prop up ng mas mataas na level eh. Diba? Kung pauperized yan, babagsak yung lipunan mo eh. And hindi mo nga kailangan pag-usapan dito ang sosyalismo eh. Tingnan nyo na lang ang Great Depression sa United States. Ano ang naging solusyon ni Franklin Delano Roosevelt? The idea of the New Deal is simply, ibalik yung yaman dun sa baba. Kasi pagka nakakonsentra ang yaman sa tuktok, bagsak talaga ekonomiya mo. Yun yung reason kung bakit may Great Depression. Kasi ang yaman hindi nagsisirculate sa baba, talagang nakaimbak lang sa tuktok. So wala ka makikreate ng mga economic activity. Wala ka makikreate ng mga business. Babagsak ang mga business mo, di ba? So anong naging solusyon nila? You flow back wealth sa baba. So for 30 years, inimbak nyo lang ng inimbak dyan sa tuktok ang yaman. High time naman, balik nyo naman sa baba para kang, di ba? Para magkaroon naman ng circulation ng pera, di ba? Para naman magkaroon ng actividades, economic activity dun sa higher layers.
Okay, I see. Another thing you proposed also was that the government should subsidize the wage hike for MSMEs. I think this was last year. I believe you mentioned that. Critics say that even with government subsidy, yung wage hike could fuel inflation. So through increased government debt or higher taxes, some would say it would promote a firm's dependency on subsidies. Others say hindi siya sustainable by nature kasi maybe one time the government will have to let go of these subsidies. So baka tataas yung inflation because of that. How would you respond to those?
I don't understand those arguments because the government has been subsidizing the expenses of the poorest of the poor through our TUPAD, through our AIX. But they're using it in order to disguise yung vote buying and control of the dynasties. Pero that's direct government subsidy to subsidize your expenses. Ano ba naman yun na instead na ang i-subsidize mo ay ang expenses, i-subsidize mo yung operation ng business. Imbis na ibigay mo directly, gawin mo siyang sweldo. Gawin mo siyang wage. Ipadaan mo doon sa MSME. At magkakaroon ng trabaho, magkakaroon ng production, magkakaroon ng economic activity. So yung subsidy mo, instead na simply you will use it for direct expenditure, di ba? You will stimulate economic activity. Bakit masama 'yon? 'Di ba? Bakit? 'Di ba? Ang TUPAD ba, AIX and AKAP nagreklamo sila na inflationary 'yon. 'Di ba, ang money supply mo dadami with the AIX, AKAP and AIX. Meron ba silang findings na it caused inflation? Marami rin naman doon galing sa utang. We have 13 trillion, di ba? Ang laki ng national budget ng Pilipinas galing sa utang. The same thing. Di ba? Pinalaki niya ang utang. Pero sinasubsidize mo directly. Bakit walang reklamo doon? Kasi pabor na pabor sa mga dinastiya. Di ba? Pag diniretso mong ganyan, galing sa kanila, it's as if, di ba, sila ay nanggaling sa kanilang sariling pocket. O sila ang bobotohin. We are, spending billions and billions on subsidies na na ganun lang kalimitado ang purpose.
At saka ganun kalimitado yung effect
ang effect, di
Sa
ba? I'm not
ekonomiya.
saying na dapat walang direct assistance to the poor. Of course.
Mhm.
Sobrang hirap ng buhay. Pero yung logic ng argument na yan, nakakatawa.
Mhm.
Di ba? Nakakatawa talaga.
Oo. So parang if ever if government's already gonna spend, might as well spend it in places that produce economic
Oh,
activity.
yeah.
Tama. Okay, so another proposal you have is the wealth tax. So some critics will argue that this would create capital flight. It would lower economic entrepreneurial activity. Ano yung response mo
O
doon?
sige. Si Manny Villar,
Oo.
siya ay bilyonaryo. Nga?
Oo.
Mag-impose ka ng 1% to 3%. Yun lang naman ang proposal sa wealth tax.
Mhm.
1 to 3%.
Mhm.
Na may one time, may recurring. Depende kung ano yung design mo ng wealth tax. So, personal assets, sabihin natin, mag-impose tayong 3. Malaki na. Di ba? Ilang billion ng pera ni Manny Villar, parang nasa $8 billion yata. Right now?
Mhm.
Dito niya generate yan sa real estate.
Mhm.
Kuhanan mo siya ng 3%, may 97%. Anong sasabihin ni Manny Villar? Ay, ayoko na. Ayoko na magnegosyo. Kasi may wealth tax na 3%. Ayoko na. Dadalhin ko ang aking mga bilyon. Pupunta ako sa ibang bansa, doon ako mag-invest. Talaga? Gawin mo yan? No, saan ka mag-invest doon? Saan mo dadali ng $8 billion mo? Sige nga. Kumukurot lang kami ng 3% eh. Tatakbo ka? Aba, maniwala ako tatakbo ka. Diba? We are talking here about billionaires. Diba? Not businessmen in general. Billionaires.
Okay.
Bawasan natin konti. 3% lang. Diba? Hindi ko talaga maintindihan ang ganyan mga argument.
Where do you see this money going to? What specific government projects?
Marami, 'di ba?
activities
Meron
you guys
tayong
will
mga gusto natin ng wage subsidy,
do?
'di ba? Ayaw natin kasi mag-generate ng pera na galing sa utang actually, 'di ba?
Okay.
Mababawasan natin ang dependency sa utang.
Mhm.
Laki na ng utang natin eh. I don't know. Iniwan ni Duterte yan na 13 trillion, umabot na yata ngayon sa 15 trillion pesos. Nagbabayad tayo ng interest ng sobrang malaki yan every year. Eh samantalang lumalaki, lumulobo lang ang assets ng mga bilyonaryo natin. Di ba? I-generate natin sa taxes, sa wealth tax. Mayaman pa rin sila eh. 3% kukunin sa'yo, may 97% ka pa ng assets mo. I mean, di ba? In the meantime, ikaw ay tumitiba-tiba doon sa mga pagbaba ng mga real estate tax. Alam mo yan, si Manny Villar, bumaba ang real estate tax. O yung mga pagbaba ng mga lahat ng mga property taxes na yan, wala man lang kayong balik. Lumobo kayo, lumaki kayo, yumaman kayo, wala man lang kayong balik, 3% lang ang hinihingi namin. Eh doon pa lang sa property tax, naging flat 6% na lang yata if I'm not mistaken. From mas malaking porsyento. Wala man lang. Di ba lumaki assets nyo dyan? O yung pagbaba ng corporate income tax, ang laki ng mga pag-generate nyo ng yaman dyan. Ilang porsyento bumaba yan? From 30 to 25% o 5% ang pagbaba niyan. Ang sinasabi lang namin sa inyo, 3% eh. Eh, ang problema sa kanila, pagka, may binago ang tax, pinaluwag, kabig sila ng kabig ng benefit. Pagka limitadong wealth tax, reklamo sila ng reklamo, mas malaki nga ang kinabig mo eh. O, di ba? So I don't really see those yung argumentong yan.
Ano yung threshold mo for this wealth tax? So 1 billion in what? In assets?
May mga iba't ibang mga mga proposals.
Okay.
May iba't ibang proposals. Pero at 1% of the assets and i-combine mo siya to 3% recurring.
Okay.
May ganun kaming studies eh. Makaka-generate siya ng 1 trillion per year. Doon sa isa, 1 trillion per 1 trillion doon sa isa, tapos 1 trillion per year doon sa isa. 1 trillion pesos.
Okay.
So, hindi ko lang maalala. Pero the point being, malaki ang makokolekt mo sa mga bilyonaryo. Diba? Malaki. At hindi sila maghihirap. Mayaman, bilyonaryo pa rin sila. And definitely, hindi sila tatakbo. Kasi andito ang operation nila para i-rake in ng mga billions na yan. So bakit ba't hindi mo sila itatax? Bakit? Tapos, pangatlo, binawasan mo nga lahat ng mga benepisyo sa kanila. Nandyan, binigay mo, binawasan mo corporate income tax, binawasan mo property taxes, binawasan mo pa yung estate tax. Diba? Yung pag namatay sila, yung pagpasa sa kanilang mga anak, yung kanilang mga properties, binawasan mo lahat yan. Diba? Wala man lang, wala man lang balik, wala man lang. We're just talking about 3%, 1%. Dito, lumubo ang kanilang assets sa ganyang pagbawas ng mga taxes. Kasama pa dyan ng kanilang, kahit na binawasan, kasama pa dyan ang mga tax avoidance nila. Kasama pa dyan ang, kung hindi tax avoidance, outright tax evasion. Di ba, masyado naman nating pinabubundat ang mga bilyonaryo. Samantalang utang tayo ng utang ngayon sa mga, di ba, utang tayo ng utang doon sa kakulangan ng revenue dahil binawasan natin sila. Tapos samantalang, ang mas tinatax natin ay ang mga mahihirap because of our consumption taxes. Ang tax kasi natin sa Pilipinas, mas kinukuha yan sa VAT at saka sa excise tax. Which is tax on consumption. Not on wealth, not on income. So itatax sa every time na bumibili ka. So ang tatamaan talaga niyan ay ang ang consuming public. Ang mga mahihirap, di ba? So nagrereklamo tayo ngayon ng inflation. Yan inflationary kaya yan. Di ba? Tataas talaga ang presyo ng mga bilihin mo dahil meron kang consumption taxes, 12% VAT. Di ba? At ilang percent na excise tax. Baguhin naman natin medyo equitable ang ating tax regime sa Pilipinas.
You were also opposed to the trade, no? I believe.
Yeah, oo. Kasi yun nga ang effect nun, binawasan ng mga taxes sa income at taxes sa asset na na-accumulate ng mga mayayaman. At ipapasa ngayon dun sa mga mahihirap. Sa constitution natin, we must have a progressive type of taxation. Ibig sabihin ng progressive type of taxation, itatax mo dapat ang yaman at itatax mo yung income. Mas mayaman ka, mas malaking tax. Which, ganun naman sa ibang bansa. Sinasabi natin, maganda Australia, maganda ang Canada, maganda. Kasi progressive ang taxation kaya doon. Tapos nakikita nila yung taxes nila napupunta sa social services. Napupunta sa health. Bakit? Kasi progressive ang taxation. O dito sa atin, regressive Yung tinatax mo mahirap.
Yeah.
O, di ba?
I see that. What are other social justice issues you want to highlight, that you usually highlight and that you want to highlight in 2028 moving forward?
Yeah, it's really tied to the fact that we want an alternative economy, a productive economy. So, of course, we have to resolve the historical injustice to our farmers. They must have land. They must develop the land. Dapat ina-assist din sila, sinusuportahan sila ng gobyerno. Because our farmers are the producers. They are the productive sector. In other countries, talagang tinatrato nila mga farmers nila na economic actors. Siyempre, di ba? Nag-i-invest sila doon. Bukod sa fact pa na they control the land. They make it productive through agriculture. Sinasubsidize sila ng gobyerno. And ang subsidy na yon is not charity. So, hindi siya charity kasi may balik yun I mean, in more productivity. I'm referring to countries like Vietnam, like Thailand, na ngayon nauunahan pa tayo ng Vietnam actually. Many economic managers ay sinasabi nila, ba't tayo inuunahan ng Vietnam? Of course, maunahan tayo ng Vietnam kasi inaalagaan nila ang kanilang mga magsasaka. Hindi nila pinapabayaan ang kanilang agricultural sector. And we must understand the basic production in any society. If you really want to engage in nation building, ang pinaka-basic and foundational would be agricultural production. Kapag wala ka nun, hindi ka makakaangat sa tinatawag nating value chain. So from agricultural production, then you can, industrialize. You could create industries in order to process yung raw agricultural product mo, and then you could create industries also in order to provide farm inputs and implements in order to modernize your agriculture. So kabit-kabit lahat yan eh. So kung wala talagang pagkalinga sa mga magsasaka, ganitong klaseng ekonomiya tulad ng Pilipinas ang mangyayari sa'yo.
How did we reach a point where we are now, because we're such an agricultural country, we have so much land, so much natural resources. How did we reach a point where we are now importing our own rice?
Yes, because we in the decades before today, isang malaking question yan eh. How do we modernize Philippine economy? And the key to that is to distribute land. In fact, yung grand uncle mo, Ninoy Aquino, was into that question and he was in favor of land reform. But our Philippine elite has answered the question of modernization by avoiding the question of wealth redistribution, meaning to say the redistribution of land to our farmers, and sought to industrialize our country by simply, producing for export, in addition to our export of raw agricultural products. And hindi maganda ang naging resulta nun. Diba? So in Japan, for example, nung na-conquer ni MacArthur ang Japan after World War II, isa yan sa pinakauna niyang ginawa, land reform. Look at where Japan is right now.
Okay. So I'm gonna move on to, you mentioned my grand uncle Ninoy Aquino. You're holding his book here.
Yes.
The Testament from a Prison Cell.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you've read that already.
Yeah.
And I know you're very fascinated by him. What started your fascination with him?
My father was also a big fan of Ninoy Aquino. I grew up na yung picture ni Ninoy Aquino, pina-frame niya eh. I think that was the Free Press Man of the Year na cover photo ni Ninoy Aquino, pina-frame niya. At the time, hindi pa siya namamatay. And I was asking, sino yan? And they would point out, si Ninoy Aquino yan. So I was fascinated, sino kaya yan si Ninoy Aquino? And then, noong 1983, siya ay na-assassinate. And doon ko nalaman, siya pala yung si Ninoy Aquino na nandun sa picture. So my fascination with him started with the fact that my father also idolized him. But of course, as I grew up, I came into contact also with his principles, yung beliefs niya, philosophy niya. And I learned na hindi siya simpleng politiko. Siya ay isang visionary. May vision siya as to what Philippine society should look like. And he was an advocate of social justice. Although he administered Hacienda Luisita, he knew, and he was saying that he's gonna distribute land, starting with Hacienda Luisita. And he really wanted to encourage the Philippine elite to veer away from agriculture towards industrialization. At ang gagawin niya sa mga lupa ay i-distribute sa mga magsasaka. And ang just compensation for him is not in cash. Ang kanyang programa sa land reform ay gagawin niyang parang government bonds ang just compensation. Meaning to say, gagabitin ng gobyerno mismo ang just compensation mo para i-develop naman ang locality, para magkaroon ng industrialization. He was also into centralized economic planning. So hindi yan laissez-faire na type of an economy. He said that we must harness our meager resources the country like the Philippines na napaka-konti ng resources, kailangan ng gobyerno ang pinakamalaking actor in order to plan that economy at make it more equitable for all. So he really wanted a modern type of a society and a modern type of an economy. And that entailed, giving social justice not only to the farmer but also to the laborer. He has all of this in his testament to the prison cell. And I would always point out na itong testament to the prison cell, hindi yan isang bagay na binobola mo. Kasi sa context na yon na siya ay nililitis ng military tribunal at siya ay hahatulan ng firing squad, most likely siya ay mamamatay. Ang tendency mo nun ay talagang gusto mong i-spell out what you are fighting for posterity. Kasi mamamatay ka lang din naman papatayin ka, sisentensyan ka ng kamatayan. Talagang gusto mo maging klaro sa buong mundo na ano ang meaning nun. Anong meaning ng iyong pagsasuffer? Anong meaning ng iyong imprisonment? Anong meaning ng iyong death sentence? Para maintindihan ng lahat at walang confusion as to what he is fighting for. Meaning to say, he is not simply a liberal Democrat.
Mhm.
And which is ironic because he is being turned into an icon of liberal democracy. Well, no, he was not a liberal Democrat. He was, in his own words, a Christian socialist.
Mhm.
And I admire him for that.
Is that, I guess, what about his personality do you admire the most? About yung, I mean, syempre you have your understanding of his beliefs. But in terms of like, parang yung pagkatao niya, what is one thing you admire about?
Well, he is very good in the ways and means of traditional politics. But he was more than that. Kasi kung ikaw ay simpleng trapo, di ba? Bakit mo naman ialay ang buhay mo? Ikulong ka, bakit hindi ka naman makikipag-compromise kay Marcos? Kapag trapo ka, makikipag-compromise ka kay Marcos. And many of those na nandun sa political opposition, in order for them to, para magkaroon sila ng kalayaan, siyempre, nanahimik na lang sila. And it was offered to him, I think, in one of his speeches, yung LA speech. Sinabi sa kanya yon, lalapitan siya at sinasabihan, ang lakas ng bugyo, ang lakas ng kalaban. Dapat humingi ka na lang ng tawad kay Marcos. And he said, ba't naman ako hingi ng tawad, di ba? Siya nagkasala sa bayan. I mean, he could be free.
Yes.
That's the point. Pwede siyang palayain ni Marcos. Tigil niya na lang ang opposition niya kay Marcos. Kung simpleng trapo lang siya, he was a good traditional politician. He was, di ba? Pero kung simpleng ganun lang siya, di dapat nakipag-compromise na siya kay Marcos. Wala namang ibang at that time, di ba? Nanahimik na lahat at that time. So, ano pang gagawin niya doon? Ay nag-iisa na lang siya. And that was one of the many na times na meron siyang dalawang choice. Titindigan niya ang prinsipyo kahit siya ay mag-suffer. At pinili niya talaga yung kanyang prinsipyo. And the other time is, hindi naman niya kailangan bumalik sa Pilipinas. Mamamatay siya. Alam niyang papatayin siya, di ba? Pero he needed to do that in order to, number one, he was really so worried na kapag hindi nagkaroon ng reform, ay magkakaroon ng violence. And he wanted to return in order to convince Marcos to, give up power and enter into a transition na. Kasi mamamatay na siya. He was really so concerned. He was not a revolutionary. He said so. And because he doesn't want a violent type of change. Diba? Now, pero nung time na yon, he was so concerned about what will happen to the Philippines na si Marcos ay hindi na tatagal. May sakit na. At ang kanyang problem noon, kapag namatay si Marcos, magkakaroon ng military junta headed by Imelda Marcos and General Ver at lalong magiging masama. Kasi pagka nagkaroon ng military junta, walang ibang choice para patalsikin yan, kundi talagang lalong palakasin ang armadong pakikibaka. And many lives will be lost. Yun yung sa thinking niya. So, may choice siya. Babalik siya and there is really a threat and a possibility na siya ay ma-assassinate. When he left the United States to go back to the Philippines, hindi pa siya sure. He was still hopeful na he will survive it. He was still hopeful na simpleng arestuhin lang siya, dadalhin lang siya sa kulungan right away. it was really in Taiwan and in the last leg of his journey that he got word. Kasi marami namang moles yan si Ninoy. As a journalist, nagme-maintain ng mga contacts yan sa loob ng gobyerno. Marami siyang mga mole. So, he was informed, we don't know who, within, siyempre sa military establishment at saka kay Marcos, na ang mangyayari sa kanya, papatayin siya. And he did not back down. He knew that it will be politically disastrous. Kung nagsimula na siya na bumalik sa Pilipinas at tumakbo siya, alam niyang magiging politically disastrous yan. And he chose to provide an example. You could see it in his face when the military escorts or the constabulary escorts ay dinala na siya. You could see it in his expression. He knew what will happen. Pero hindi siya tumakbo. Diba? So, prinsipyo ang dinadala niya. Hindi siya ordinaryong trapo. He was principled while he is very good in the ways of traditional politics. And he could have been president in 1973. Pero kung yun at yun lang talaga ang kanyang iniisip at hindi niya iniisip ang pagbabago ng lipunan, malamang sa malamang iba ang magiging kwento ni Ninoy. Hindi siya magiging martir, hindi siya magiging political detainee. Pero he chose yung ganyang klaseng ending sa kanyang buhay at yung ganyang klaseng paghihirap because he was more than a traditional politician. He was a man with vision. He was a man of principle. And that's what I admired most about Ninoy.
And he had the courage to stand up for that vision.
Yes,
for those principles. Thank you for that. I think that's a lot of people don't know that he already had word that he was gonna experience a lot of risk if he came home, and yet he still chose to do it because ma-prinsipyo talaga yung pagkatao niya.
And he made sure to make that known. Diba sa last interview niya kasi in-interview pa siya sa aeroplano. Pero doon sa hotel room niya sa Taiwan, he showed his bulletproof. And then he said, pero kapag babarilin siya sa ulo, wala siyang magagawa.
Okay, so I'm gonna go now to our fast talk. So we're gonna finish this in a bit. I wanna get to a fast talk segment. So basically, I'll ask you a question. Tapos unless I ask you why, in one sentence, yun yung sagot.
At least sentence, hindi word, ano? At least hindi yes or no.
Hindi naman. I'm sure may mga debates na word lang yung sinasabi mo. Okay. So, let's start with the fast talk. Senate floor or picket line?
Senate floor.
Debate or dialogue?
Debate.
Universal healthcare or universal education if you could only pass one? Healthcare. What do you identify as politically?
I identify myself as a proletarian socialist.
What problem requires a more urgent response? Neoliberalism in the Philippines? Neoliberalism or authoritarianism?
Neoliberalism.
Okay, why?
Because one gives rise to the other. If we change our economic structures, we also change along with it our political structures. If our economy is more inclusive, then it will call for more democracy.
Okay. If you had 30 seconds with President Marcos, what would you tell him?
I will tell him to betray his family and to betray his class.
Why?
Because he wanted to be remembered in history, right? He wants to have a legacy in history that he is not simply a son of a dictator, and he wanted to change things. He wanted to clear the name of the Marcos family. Now, this is his big chance. If you have to clear the name of your family, you must veer away from what your family represents. You must, in fact, apologize for the crimes of your father. Be different. I don't want to say na wala na beyond sa anyone na anak ng mga diktador ang ganyan. Like the son of Benjamin Franklin was an opponent of the American War for Independence. That's a bad example, but you don't have to be your father. In fact, you can oppose your father. If your father was oppressive, you can fight for the oppressed.
Oh.
There is one person in Negros. His name was Serge Chernigin, and he fought for farmers' rights. His father was a soldier of the Tsar of Russia, who went and immigrated to Negros to become an overseer of an hacienda. He was different from his father. You could oppose what your father represented. Now, that would have been a great personal narrative. Instead of trying to clear the name of your family by avoiding the history and committing historical revisionism, you accept the history, change that history by actually siding with the oppressed. But unfortunately, dun pa lang sa test kung kakampi siya sa mga api sa lipunan, he failed miserably. He did not even certify as urgent yung wage bill kahit na nakapasa na ito sa Senado. Pinatagal niya sa House of Representatives and later on pinatay lang ang wage bill. Sa panahon ngayon na he's facing political crisis, he can still afford to become more unpopular by allowing the wage bill na mamatay lang sa Philippine Congress. So basically, he has failed in trying to create a better narrative for himself. And I would encourage him. Wala ka na rin namang ibang mapupuntahan. You're facing political crisis, challenge from the Dutertes. The Dutertes represent also an oppressive force in our country. Then if you want to really distinguish yourself from your political opponent, and you want to clear the Marcos name, may time pa, may 3 years ka pa. Betray your family, betray your class. Side with the oppressed.
Wow.
It's still possible.
Okay, if you had 30 seconds with Vice President Duterte, what would you say naman to her?
With Vice President Duterte, there's no other way for you. Be gone from Philippine history. You belong to the dustbin of history. Your entire family, your father and your siblings.
Okay. So, now we'll move on to more personal, fast talk. So, hindi na siya masyado political. What is the first thing you do in the morning?
Drink coffee and smoke.
Oh, okay. Ano ka? Black coffee?
Black coffee, no sugar, no cream.
Tapos ano yung flavor ng cigarettes mo?
It has no flavor.
Okay.
My cigarettes, I don't smoke cigarettes.
Okay.
I'm one of the few, and I'm not from the elite, but I smoke cigars.
Oh, wow.
Philippines cigars.
Guwapo. Yung effect nun.
No, it's not for forma, really. I really just found it more satisfying than cigarettes.
Okay. I see. Ano ba? What makes it the most?
Because it has a strong taste.
Strong taste.
Yeah.
Okay. I see. Are you secretly addicted to TikTok?
No.
No.
None at all.
Okay. What are you addicted to? Aside from cigars.
Actually, watching videos. Do you
Watching
mean?
videos.
Yeah.
Okay.
Documentaries. Historical documentaries. I love watching the historical documentaries.
Aside from Ninoy Aquino, at sino pa yung mga favorite mong historical figures?
I kind of noticed that I am drawn to historical figures who are good orators.
Okay.
And I found out why eventually. Because the very first memory I had of my own father was he was delivering a speech in the Bacolod Public Plaza. He was campaigning against the latest amendment of the Marcos Constitution. So he's campaigning for no to the amendment of the Marcos Constitution. I was around, I think, 4 years old.
Okay.
And growing up, I admired historical figures who were great orators like Fidel Castro, Malcolm X, and of course Ninoy Aquino. And I concluded this is probably my way of identifying with my own father.
Okay. And it's good that you mentioned that now kasi Father's Day today as we're filming now. So happy Father's Day also to your father. Okay, next question. Ano yung go-to karaoke song mo?
It's embarrassing. Narda.
Okay. What's your guilty pleasure movie or TV show?
Oh, guilty
Aside from
pleasure
documentaries.
movie. Oh my God. It's not really guilty pleasure. It's quite conventional knowing myself. Movie, my favorite movie would be Cinema Paradiso.
Cinema Paradiso.
Yeah.
May TV show ka ba?
None. I
None.
don't watch television.
Okay. What's one food you'd never say no to?
One food I'll never say no to. I actually have broken up with my love affair with food.
Oh, wow.
Yes, but I would say dried fish, the bulad in my home province, Bulan.
Okay. What's your home province?
Negros Occidental. I come from Bacolod.
Okay. I see. Oh, nga pala, that's why you mentioned your father was in
Yeah,
the Bacolod,
Bacolod
Public
Public
Plaza.
Plaza.
Okay. If you weren't a lawyer, if you weren't an activist, what would you be?
I would probably be a filmmaker.
Filmmaker. Okay. Did you ever dabble into that before?
No time.
Never pa.
Mm.
Okay. If you were to have dinner with one person, dead or alive, who would that person be?
Ninoy Aquino, of course.
Bakit? Ano yung mga questions that you'll ask him?
No, I just would like to talk to him without any questions.
Okay.
Mm.
Just to learn from him.
Yeah,
you know.
yeah.
Okay.
I heard he was a great storyteller.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Oo. Ano, and nakatawa din siya according to my relatives. Because I never met him. I was born 2001. Namatay siya 1983. Okay, so that's it for the fast talk. I have one last question for you. If you were to choose a country you want the Philippines to become like, what would that country be? And what about that country do you want for the Philippines?
Yeah, okay. Oh, that's a hard one. Hard. Can I have a combination of countries?
Okay.
Okay. No. Just one country. Okay. Cuba without the blockade.
Okay.
Cuba without the blockade. That country, mas importante sa kanila ang human beings. Okay. They have free healthcare, free education. It's really a total development of human beings. The only problem is, mahirap siya because of the blockade. So, gusto siyang isabotage ng United States of America. Ayaw siya mag-succeed sa kanyang socialist project. Pero kung wala yung blockade na yon, and kaya niyang makipag-trade sa ibang bansa to produce yung mga commodities at hindi ganoon ka-shackled ang kanyang ekonomiya, then it would have been more capable of providing welfare to the citizens, developing them, giving them free education, free health, and at the same time hindi ganoon ka hirap o kasalat yung ganong bansa. So it should be Cuba without the blockade.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Attorney Luke, for joining this
Thank you,
podcast.
Thank you very much.
And very honored to have you. I learned so much, and I hope you guys did as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey there, thanks for listening to the Hey Iyo podcast. If you enjoyed, don't forget to follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or your other favorite podcast apps. And follow me, Iyo Aquino, EIYOAQUYNO on TikTok.